Today we are going to discuss Alfred Tennyson as the representative poet of the Victorian age. Tennyson is as much a representative poet of the Victorian age as Chaucer was of the 14th century and Alexander Pope of the 18th century England. Tennyson's poetry reflects the true spirit of the age. It may be noted that he is not a mere follower, but an interpreter of the age. There is nothing prophetic about his writings. His truly representative character made him universally popular in his own age. There are so many characteristic points of the Victorian age in the whole life and work of Alfred Tennyson. The most pronounced of them all is the democratic note in his poetry. Victorian age was an age of democratic spirit. Common people were fighting for their equal rights and political freedom. Tennyson himself belonged to the upper middle class and could not transcend the limitations of his class. This attitude towards the common man was that of the cultured aristocratic outsider. But he favored peaceful and slow evolution rather than any kind of struggle or revolution. His attitude was one of compromise between the claims of the masses and those of the landed aristocracy. But he had little support for the demand of equality. In his work, The Lord of Burleigh, he supports the claims of the landed democracy. However, in his long poem, The Princess, he deals with the question of emancipation of women. According to Tennyson, let me quote his words: "Man for the field and woman for the hearth, man for the sword and for the needle she, man with the head and woman with the heart, man to command and woman to obey, all else confusion," unquote. Then another important point about Victorian age is the claims of science and religion, in which we find that there is the Victorian compromise, which Tennyson beautifully represents. One of the major features of the age of Tennyson was the rise of scientific spirit. Tennyson's attitude towards scientific progress was skeptical. Sometimes he spoke of science with impatience. Sometimes he shrank back in dismay before the immensities of science. In fact, Tennyson swung between the two extremes of science and religion. Life seemed to him a moment between two eternities. In his longer poem, In Memoriam, he says, "But what am I? An infant crying in the night, an infant crying for the light, and with no language but a cry," unquote. This was the cry not of Tennyson alone, but of the whole generation whose faith had been rudely shaken by the discoveries of science. In Memoriam appeared alike to the man of science who found that he was understood, and also to the common man oppressed with doubts and fears. It gratified also the orthodox who was finally assured that somehow good will be the final goal of ill. Tennyson was deeply impressed by the importance of the human mind before the eternal enigma of things. He was also keenly alive to the discoveries of science and at the same time passionately anxious to conserve the hopes of man. He was thus peculiarly fitted to become the poetic interpreter of the spiritual unrest of the age, its two voices of faith and doubt. He had glimmerings of evolution before it was clearly enunciated by Darwin. It also reveals a wondrous knowledge of astronomy, but against scientific materialism, he always asserted his belief in God and immortality. Science left its mark on another of his important poems known as Maud. The evolutionary tendencies of the poet are unmistakably found in this poem. As he says, so many a million of ages have gone to the making of man. He now is first, but is he the last? Is he not too base? The same evolutionary thought is reflected in these lines of his longer poem In Memoriam also. As he says, a soul shall draw from out the vast and strike his being into bounds, and moved through life of lower phase result in man. The struggle between scientific outlook and religious faith made the masses more and more skeptical. In such a situation, Tennyson sought to preach a compromise. This compromise was the need of the hour. In this poem also appear his important lines, let knowledge grow from more to more, and more of reverence in us dwell, that mind and soul according well may make one music as before. Tennyson advocated slow progress and stable freedom, which slowly broadens down from precedent to precedent. But he was not against the claims of science. In some stanzas of In Memoriam, he puts forward the claims of science. He preferred honest doubt to blind faith. As he says, there remains more faith in honest doubt, believe me, than in half the creeds.